then you create culture, media, and education in order to brainwash or indoctrinate people. The empire is what changed people to the floor and make them think they were powerless to resist.
The next date I have here for your predictions is 2030.
Okay.
So in the year 2030, what does that look like?
Okay, so we're going through a tumultuous period of systems change, which will ultimately lead to systems collapse, okay? So let me explain to you what the system is today. All right, so transnational capital is a very important concept, right? But I want to show you how it creates this world and structures this world, okay? All right, so at the very core of our world is the idea of empire. Okay? And the empire, of course, is Pax Americana. Basically, the ability of America's military to project power anywhere in the world, right? Creating the aura of inevitability and invincibility, okay? When we discuss this, right? But that's the basis of everything, okay? People's fear of the empire. And then the empire allows this game to be created. And these are the financiers. Okay? So this is transnational capital, basically. But they create the game that we live in. Because, again, money is not valuable. Money is just a mechanism to store and extract wealth, which is what? Which is our attention, our consciousness. Okay? Because our consciousness is the source of all reality. So if you can control and focus a person's consciousness, you can create reality itself. Okay? So money is a mechanism to focus our attention and then extract our attention to store it properly. Okay? And let me give you an example. All right. Just to say that I asked you to make a vase to sell. While you're making this vase, you're indifferent. You're like, whatever, I don't really care. So you listen to music, you're watching TV as you make this vase. You're not really attentive. Well, the vase is going to be pretty ugly, which means you can't sell it for that much, right? But let's just say, for the reason you want to make the most beautiful vase in the world. You're completely focused on it. You see a purpose and a meaning in creating this vase. Maybe because you're giving it to your mother or your wife or whatever. But you spend days and days just pondering, just focused on it. It becomes your life itself. It creates a sensation in you called flow, which is a concept coined by a psychologist named Jiang. But it's the most creative stage anyone can achieve, where you lose a sense of time and space itself, where you're just focused on the act of creation so that you become the act of creation itself, right? So a painter goes through this, where a painter is drawing a picture and he or she becomes so enamored with this picture that he or she doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, doesn't drink water, doesn't go to the bathroom because he or she is so focused on it, okay? That's attention. When you do that, whatever you create is going to be valuable, right? And then money is a way to store and extract that value. But what created this value was your consciousness, was your attention. And that's a really important principle to understand, okay? All right. So the finance people use money as a mechanism in order to extract and store your attention. And the way they do that is by making money universal, which means that everyone has to use it, and money can be used for anything. Okay, that's the idea of universality, and this creates the global economy. Okay, because basically the entire global economy is run on the U.S. dollar. It's what facilitates trade, right? It's why we go to work. It's how we pay for things, right? So that creates the global economy. Okay. But you cannot allow people to think this is how the system works, because then people lose faith in this system, right? If people understand that money is just a currency no different from monopoly money, then people aren't going to work hard at it. So they need to create an artifice, a superstructure to disguise the fact and give meaning and value to money itself, okay? And you do that by creating something called the rules-based international order, okay? Or maybe the UN, the World Trade Organization. And this becomes the substitute for the financiers who have the real power. Okay, and the financiers include Wall Street, State of London, the Federal Reserve, Bank of International Settlements. Okay, it's one group of people in different guises. Okay. All right. So now you have the rules-based international order, and then you create culture, media, and education in order to brainwash or indoctrinate people into believing that this is a system, this rules-based international order, that is the basis for reality itself, okay, as opposed to our imagination. Right? And that's why people are saying, oh, Donald Trump went to invade Iran. That's against international law. He should be tried at Nuremberg. There should be a Nuremberg trial for Donald Trump. That's silly, man.
Right.
I mean, it's the empire that controls everything. But people, for whatever reason, believe there is a rules-based international order. If you defy it, the police will come and arrest you and put you on trial. They literally believe that. All right? But then you ask them, like, well, then who's going to do that? And they're like, well, the United Nations. And like, okay, that's the United Nations to have a military that can defeat the American military. But it becomes, so it doesn't make much sense, but they don't really care. It's their sense of reality itself, okay? And because it's been brainwashing to them through popular culture, through media like New York Times and BBC, and through the education system, the universities basically, okay? And then this creates the the values and norms, right? All right, so this is the superstructure of the world, okay? Does this make sense to you?
I believe so. Can you summarize it one more time?
All right, let's do it again, okay? All right, so think of Plato's allegory of the cave.
Right.
Where everyone is chained to the floor and they can only stare at the wall, okay? The empire is what chains people to the floor and make them think they're powerless to resist. But then you have people in the background creating the illusion, creating the reality itself with these puppets that are reflected off the fire onto the wall. These are the game masters. These are the financiers. And then when people look at this wall, they create a reality of it. They play a game of like giving names to the shadows, of pretending there's stories behind these shadows. And this is the economy, the global economy.
Right.
Okay? And then you have to explain, okay, how does this world work? Well, you can't see the people behind you, so you say, well, it comes from God or a spiritual force, okay? And that's the rules-based international order. And then you're like, okay, well, you need to indoctrinate children into the system. So you have teachers, you have propagandists, journalists, you have priests who teach children to believe the system the moment they're born, okay?
And those people believe it too, so...
Obviously. Right? Because they can't see behind themselves. If they turn around, they see who's really pulling the strings, but they can't turn around. So they can only stare in front.
So transnational capital is trying to make us, or has made us believe that money is God. But I guess I know this is a complex topic, but what's the single most important thing people need to know about money to know that it's fake and something that they can...
Yeah, okay. Really simple idea, okay? All right, so there's a bank. And people think that bank is a place where they take the deposited money and they use it to fuel the economy by lending to entrepreneurs, right? And that's what drives the economy. Okay, but here's the problem though. You're the bank. Depositors put $1 million into the bank, okay? You take that $1 million and then you give it to entrepreneurs to open a restaurant, okay? Right? Question is, how much money is in the bank now? The answer is not zero, which is what the math says, right? The answer is actually $2 million. And you're like, okay, that's kind of stupid. Where do we get this system? Okay, it comes from early banking. It comes from Venice, basically, okay? So back then, they didn't have money. They had gold, right? So you put $1 million of gold into the bank. Now, the bank's going to lend this $1 million primarily to merchants who engage in trade, okay? But the problem is that you don't want to physically give people the gold because it's dangerous. It doesn't really do anything. So what you do is you give them a receipt for the gold, right? So you say $1 million receipt for the gold. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now in your ledger, you have $2 million because that gold didn't go away, but then you also create a receipt for that gold. which becomes currency in itself, as long as people are willing to believe that this contract has value. And that's how money works.